Welcome to the second part of our training, Starting Literature Circles. Okay, now you know what literature circles are, what the different jobs are, so it's time to get them organized and launched. First, you need to decide how many students you want to have in each literature circle group. Ideally, you'll have the same number of students in each group, but there are times that you will have to be flexible, and some groups will have one more or one less student than the others. When I'm coaching teachers on literature circles, I usually break it up into two levels, level 1 being second and third grade, and level 2 being fourth and fifth grade. Because of the maturity differences between those grades, I differentiate recommendations between them. So looking at second and third grade, I recommend having between 4 and 6 students in each literature circle group, and no more than 6 students per group. For fourth and fifth grade, I recommend 4 to 8 students in a group and no more than 8. I really do think the sweet spot is 5 to 6 students per literature circle group across all grade levels. This is another question I get asked a lot when teachers are beginning literature circles. Should my reading groups or literature circle groups be heterogeneous or homogeneous? Meaning, should my students be grouped by similar reading levels or should they have varied levels within the group? What I'm going to tell you is that there's no right answer here, but what I do recommend when starting out is that you do stick to homogeneous grouping, meaning that students are grouped similarly by their reading levels. Many teachers already have guided reading groups in place, so it makes it a really easy transition to take those groups and create literature circle groups, as well as making book choice simple for each group, since students will be at similar levels. After a round or two of literature circles, you can try mixing student levels up and having book selections that are kind of middle of the road and accessible for all students in each group. Once you have the number of students per group figured out, it's time to decide which student jobs you'll use. In video 1, I showed you the 8 different literature circle jobs and the grade level recommendations for those jobs, but you need to think over the abilities of your students and what would work best for your classroom. You also want to make sure that you have differentiated job sheets for your students. So while all the groups are doing the same jobs, they can be differentiated accordingly to students' capabilities. All right, now that you have planning underway, it's time to introduce students to the jobs. You are going to plan to do this about 1 month before you want to start literature circles. So I'll say that again. When you know you're going to start literature circles, you want to work backwards by 1 month and find that date. That is when you're going to start teaching students the different literature circle jobs. How you introduce the jobs is the key to making sure literature circles run successfully. Many teachers just want to quickly explain the jobs and then give students the job sheets and get them started, but 9 out of 10 times I've seen that model fail. So I'm going to share with you what I've done to make the process smooth and successful. Here's my job introduction timeline. If you are only using 6 of the jobs, it will take you 3 weeks to teach them all. If you're using all 8 jobs, plan to have 4 weeks. Each week, you're going to teach students how to complete 2 of the literature circle jobs. This process is pretty simple, but it's such a huge, important step to launching literature circles smoothly. You're going to use the job slides that I shared with you in video 1, and they are included in my Literature Circles Made Simple resource, and you are going to share with students what they are to do in each job. So let's look at week 1. You're going to introduce the discussion director and the word wizard jobs. Beginning on Monday, you'll use the job slide to introduce the directions of the job and share how that job is done. Then you're going to use your grade level reading textbook or anthology, and you're going to read a selection of the text together. So this is something you can do as you go through your usual weekly reading story, or you can opt to use a different text. Once you're done with the reading selection, you will model for students how to complete the job sheet. I like to fill the job sheet in with students on my LCD projector so they can see what a well-completed job sheet looks like versus one that isn't so great. The next day, on Tuesday, or whenever your day 2 is, students are going to practice the same job. So you will briefly review the job. you will read another part of the text together, and it can be the same text or the different text. I like to stick with the same text, just like you would be doing in the literature circle. And then you're going to let students complete the job sheet independently. So now every student has the same job sheet in their hand, and you're going to give them about 10 minutes to complete their job. Then you're going to put students in small groups of 2 or 3. This doesn't have to be in their literature circle groups. It can just be with students that are nearby. And you're going to let them share their completed job sheets as if they were doing a group share. So you want to set expectations here and let students know that they're going to take turns talking, one person at a time. The other students are being respectful and good listeners. And all those expectations you would put when students are working in small groups. Then you're going to repeat the same process for each of the remaining jobs that you're introducing. You'll follow the same 2-day pattern. So on day 1, you'll introduce the job using the job slide. You will read a section of text together. You will model the job sheet for students. And then on day 2, you're going to review the job and the expectations. You'll read a section of text together. You'll have students complete the job independently. And then you'll let students get in small groups to share their job. So just so you know, you do not have to stick to that anthology textbook. If you wanted to use a picture book over the 2 days and break it up into part 1, part 2, and have them complete their job off of that, you can absolutely do that to switch things up. It's so important, though, that you take the time to model for your students. By spending this little extra time up front when you're introducing the jobs of going through each job sheet and what a well-completed job sheet looks like, you will see huge rewards in how smoothly your literature circles run and how successful your students feel at independently completing those jobs. Also, using the language of the literature circle jobs often is important. This keeps the jobs fresh in students' mind, and I actually like to keep these job icon posters up on display in my classroom all year long so students are seeing them each day. So before you begin literature circles, there are just a few more things to plan out. First, you need to plan those groups. You need to make sure that you have some sort of organizational tool to help you keep a master list of your student groups. This is actually the group planner that I've used, and I have a printable and Google Slides version of this in my Literature Circles Made Simple resource. And what I like to do is keep these on file so I can remember which groups have read what book, and also seeing my students' groups when it's time to go ahead and regroup them. You also need to have your jobs planned out for each group. This is a job planner that I use to put in each group member's name, and I pre-schedule the jobs that they'll do before they even begin literature circles. This makes it really easy to transition them from one job to the next as they progress through their book. Sometimes teachers of older kiddos like 4th and 5th grade just let students choose a different job to rotate to at the end of their group meeting. But when you're starting out, I definitely recommend pre-assigning them and tracking it for the first round. Also, ideally, you'll have all students rotate through each job at least once during their literature circle book. So however you divide up their reading, try to make it so that each student can experience at least each job one time. Finally, you need to plan your schedule. This is what usually seems most overwhelming to teachers and is what scares them away from even trying literature circles in the first place. So to make it easy, I've done it 2 ways. I've had a 5-day-a-week schedule and a 4-day-a-week. I'm going to share with you both. Both of them do work, so it's really what works best for your schedule. With 2nd and 3rd graders, though, I highly recommend doing a 5-day-a-week schedule if you can, just to keep it consistent. So here's what a 5-day-a-week schedule would look like. We'll take a closer look at day 1 in a few slides, but I always open up with some sort of book activity. Then students meet together in their literature circle group and read their first assigned section of text together. After reading together, I let students independently work on their job sheets in class. This allows me to answer any questions that students might have. On Tuesday, or day 2, students begin literature circle time by meeting in their groups and sharing their job sheets with one another. Once group meeting time is over, groups are assigned their next section or chapters of reading and their new job. Students can begin working on this in class and then finish it for homework. This routine follows on for Wednesday and Thursday, and then by Friday, Students have their usual literature circle meeting time, but there's no reading or new jobs assigned over the weekend. When students return on Monday, they begin by reading a new section of text together, or you can make it independent reading, and then they'll begin their new job. The routine follows on for the rest of the week and repeats until students finish their book. Usually, literature circle books take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks to complete. I wouldn't have it go on much longer than 3 weeks in elementary. All right, here's a 4-day-a-week schedule. So what's different about this schedule is that their students don't have any literature circle groups or assignments on Friday. Now, if you need to skip a Monday or a Tuesday, you could do that as well. But this is just showing you what the schedule looks like with one less day of meeting and assigned reading. I've also included a schedule that shows you what it would look like if you have students using class time to read together. You'll see that with this schedule, the job sheets are always homework because the class time is allotted for literature circle meetings as well as reading together. For all grades, I highly recommend that you use this schedule for at least the first few days or week when starting out with literature circles. It will help you monitor students' reading closer and be accessible for any questions that come up as they're just starting out. Okay, I told you that I would talk a little more about day one, so here it is. When you begin literature circles and students have their books ready to go, I always begin with a fun pre-reading book activity. This helps get students even more excited about their books and their literature circle time. So this is just one activity that I use called a book cover of predictions. And I love letting students start out with this. They write phrases, draw pictures, and just start making predictions based on the cover of their book. Then students meet together in their literature circle group. They can share their book activity and what they think is going to happen. And then they have time to read their first section of text together. Now, I purposefully make this a smaller section of text, so it's a little quicker and easier for students to digest on day one. Then students go to their desks and independently complete their job sheet. This also allows me time to circle the room and answer any questions on that first day. All right, that concludes our second training, and we are moving right along. So coming up next, I'm going to share with you the ins and outs of managing literature circles, and I'm going to give you a few more tips and tricks to make them just a little bit easier. So I'll see you in the next video.